The shame is hiding beneath your preferences. And if you have some very clear-cut preferences at the moment, under which circumstances you seem to feel at ease, and if they're not met, you seem to feel extremely anxious, well, then you have an absolute gift from the Spirit, something with which you can look together at the shame and the guilt that's coming up for awareness. Now, I'm not suggesting that you try and stop your preferences. I'm not suggesting that you go against yourself. I'm merely inviting you to notice how you feel if your preference is met, or if there's a feeling that your preference will not be met, and what lengths you will go to have that preference met, and the real reason for that endeavor, the real reason you need to have the preference met, is the rising awareness of the shame and the guilt that the preference has been hiding. So it's a whole new way to look at preferences. It's to discover that they're hiding this guilt and shame, and that the thing that you even perceive that you love and that you're drawn to can be given over to the Spirit 100% and now become this wonderful accolade and this very simple, clear-cut symbol of that guilt and shame. And one of the easiest examples of this is the girl in the red dress in The Matrix. And Morpheus turns around to Neo as they're walking down the street of very mundane looking business people in their grey suits walking in one direction, and coming towards them is this buoyant blonde in a red dress, and she's bouncing along. And Morpheus says, "Neo, were you listening to me, or were you looking at the girl in the red dress?" And he goes, "Huh?" And he goes, "Look again." And when he turns around, there's a gun pointing in his face. And the message is that the girl and the gun are the same, because it's all ones and zeros in the Matrix, because it's all just curls of smoke and illusion. If you're not aware that the very thing that trips you up, that you get distracted by, that takes your attention because you think you like it, is the very thing, that preference, for example, hiding the guilt and shame. And if you don't use the girl in the red dress to see the guilt and shame, rather than thinking that the girl in the red dress is shameful, if you don't use her to see the gun that's being pointed at you and the maintenance of that guilt and shame and that wrongness and that blame in the mind, then you're not really using her in a very loving way at all. And so the Spirit is simply saying to you, whatever your preferences are, whatever you're drawn to, whatever you believe already lights up your heart, give it to me. Give it to me to use for this singular purpose, so that it can be purified and not be hiding and holding this guilt and shame. And so symbols that for you before were ways in which you self-medicated to get through the day, whether it is the hot girl on the street, whether it is the extra bowl of ice cream, whether it is the 5 chocolate biscuits you had before you even realized your cup of tea was made, whatever it was, that Netflix special that just played for 10 episodes in a row and you went unconscious, whatever it is that you've been using to self-medicate throughout the day that's a preference that just helps you get through the day or brightens up your day, hand them over to the Spirit and say, this still feels like something that I'm drawn to, and I would like it to be used solely for peace. I would like it to be used solely for happiness. And the only way that that can happen is that I use the natural draw that I have towards this thing to draw that awareness to me of my own innate innocence, and that will only come by first allowing the guilt and the shame to raise to awareness. So every time you find yourself with that cool bowl of ice cream in your hand and you're feeling the tingling on your tongue, and you notice that you feel a little better from the anxiety you had 5 minutes ago, it's still not too late to go, okay, Spirit, I notice, I believe I'm feeling better because I'm eating this ice cream. So, what was it I was feeling a moment ago that was so high that I couldn't look at it with you then, but maybe as I'm having this bowl of ice cream, I could notice the guilt and the shame and the anxiety. Yeah, that's right, I ran in here because I had a fight with my partner. I'm now eating this ice cream. I wasn't even aware I was hungry a few moments ago, and suddenly a thought of ice cream came instead of a thought of anger, because I'm so unaccepting of anger being part of my self-concept that fat and eating ice cream is preferable. So here I am with a bowl of ice cream digging into the fridge. And so you want to very humbly just start to give over all of those preferences to the Spirit, because there's no harm in them. Once they're seen as distractions, they can be given to the Spirit and purified. And so for a time, certain symbols in your life of things that were like, let's call them safe bets for you, ways in which you could definitely feel better. If someone said, what would make you feel better right now? And you're like, I need a drink. You know, whatever it was for you, they can be handed over to the Spirit so that you can use those moments to witness to what brought you to this crisis point that you're now, you know, watching the third YouTube of a cat jumping into a paper bag. It queries your mind, what's happening there. And rather than trying to analyze and dig for things, just as those particular preferences become activated, you can watch really what activated the need to medicate in that way for a moment. And so, you know, just to keep this very simple, the whole world is a distractive device. And so we're not demonizing particular types of things, especially that are seen as traditional addictions. They're just more obvious in those cases because it's accepted that many people have a similar preference system for assuaging guilt and shame. And so really what we're addicted to is the guilt and the shame. That's the addiction. And our fix on that is a world full of distractions. And so we can humbly accept that we do not know what anything is for. But if we give it voluntarily the singular purpose of forgiveness and voluntarily ask to have our hearts and minds opened and these tricks illuminated for us, then suddenly you're on an adventure with the Spirit and you're not subject to, oh no, more guilt and shame will be exposed today, oh no. Suddenly you're on an adventure. You're Indiana Jones in search of the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is sitting beneath the guilt and the shame, just waiting for you to drink of the truth of eternal life and know thyself. So come on this adventure. It's well worth it. And the more you can employ this activity of using preferences by handing them over to the Spirit and noticing what's really driving them, the more freed up you'll become, the more buoyant you'll be in your daily experience, and the more you'll feel like you're on an adventure of forgiveness rather than some old style atonement sacrifice path of trying to go from being actually guilty to being forgiven. Everything is already forgiven, and your job is the acceptance of the atonement. So merely the acceptance that it's already forgiven. And this world of distractions is just hiding that from you.